Good afternoon. My name is Glenn Faniff. I'm following up on a previous video that I had. I was going to explain the audit process, and so this is video. This is going. I'm going to probably just number these, and this will be number 2 video. And so, what's really gonna initiate this thing is you're going to receive a letter in the mail. It's an initial contact letter. I mean, depending on the type of examiner, it'll still, at the end of the day, it's initial contact. You're being audited, and they usually have they said that sometimes it's a 30-day letter or it's a 14-day letter, and it's pretty much, you have to respond in a certain period of time. And if you don't, well then, the examiner's going to take some actions. Which pretty much, if it's a tax compliance officer and they're looking at expenses, and that was what I've done in the past. Well, you know what? You didn't contact me. I'm disallowing the expenses, and I'm gonna write up a tax report. I'm gonna apply the 20% penalty under statement of taxes, and there'll be the interest in there. And I'm going to send you the report. And that's because you didn't respond. As long as I know that you're there, and they have ways to verify that this is your correct address, they'll do a postal trace, or they can see that the lights are on at your house. Basically, they can do a utility finder to see that the power is in your name and stuff. So you are getting the mail is received, and the postal service will confirm that. So you get the letter, just call the examiner back. Let them know what, they're going to get on the phone, and they're pretty much will explain the issues, what you're being audited for, the issues under examination, the tax year or tax years. Sometimes they're required to expand. When they're looking at your tax return, they're going to look at the prior year and the subsequent year. And maybe this is a common practice for you, or I would just say you're a habitual offender, or maybe it's real. I mean, I can't make any, you can't make any conclusions until then. So you'll schedule the appointment, and they'll send you a confirmation letter. In there, I mean, depending on the examiner, like I said, when they're explaining the issues, they'll give you something that's called, they call it an IDR, but it's an information document request. And it's basically the items that are under examination. And it goes into detail what you're going to need to verify that expense. I mean, that actually happened. And we're talking receipts, proof of payment, credit card statements, that it actually existed. And what was the purpose of it? I mean, if it's business related, I need to know that it's something that you're using in your business. So they'll send you something like that, an information document request, and I just use that example. There's a whole host of things, and I'll go over that down the road. But, so they'll schedule the appointment, and they'll talk about representation, and that's where the main thing I'm going to go over today is I'm going to talk about taxpayer rights. I might start into the interview process, but they'll briefly go over your taxpayer rights, some will basically at least talk about representation. And at that time, if you're uncomfortable, or some people don't make it that far, they might request, I might need someone to represent me. So they'll still schedule the appointment and stuff. And then that day of the appointment, you'll come in, and you'll sit down, and the examiner will initially what I would usually do is I'll sit down, and I try to set the taxpayer or the person at ease myself. That's just the way I am and stuff. And then I'll start talking about, I'll explain what we're going to be discussing that day. And myself, I'll just say, I'm going to go over your taxpayer rights. Then we're going to go into an interview. We're going to have a personal interview, which means I'm just going to get some basic background information. Then I'm going to do an income probe, which means we're going to review all types of income, and I'll get into this better detail and stuff. And then after that, if this is actually you have a business, I'm going to want to do a business interview. And now this is like at a tax compliance officer. This is the way they would handle it. And so we're going to talk about your business, and and then we're going to go through a whole set of questions. And it pretty much has to be done. I mean, in order to get an understanding of your business and to determine what type of expenses you actually incur in your business. And then from there, I'll explain to the taxpayer that we're going to discuss the issues under examination. See what documents that you brought with you to the interview, because that was the whole purpose of the information document request. That you need to get these. Maybe you can substantiate. I use that word too much, but maybe you can prove that these expenses you actually incurred these expenses. And then from there, I mean, if it's like when I was a tax compliance officer, I mean, usually if it's cut and dry, it's pretty easy, and let's say they can't even prove the expenses, then sometimes I'm able to I'll process the report right there, and I'll review it with them and go over the whole thing and explain everything to them and stuff. But more than likely, I'll just say, you know what, I'll just thank them. I'll get back to you on this and stuff, and then they'll leave, and then from there, I pretty much tell them I have a certain time. I'll probably get a report out in the next day or two, depending on how complicated the issue is, and that's that. So the first thing, from there, after I had that little summary with the taxpayer, I start off and I explain the taxpayer rights, and I start with the Privacy Act notice. And let's see if you can even see this here. It doesn't even show up. It's a notice 609. You can pull it off. You can pull it off the internet and stuff. Go right up there. And it's a Privacy Act notice. Now, me, I usually just state, that we share information with other agencies, whether they be public or state. And I should probably go into a little more detail on this. So, and they do. They share this information. And it's almost like you file a state tax return, and like some of these states, some of your, whatever you report for your rental income and stuff, and let's say whatever you have in there for your income and your expenses on your state return doesn't really mirror the federal return. Well, there could be a problem, or maybe you don't even claim it on your federal or state, vice versa, and they share that information. Well, there's a problem. Why aren't you reporting it here? I mean, that's pretty much, they share that information. I mean, there's other information that they share, but it's beyond the scope of this discussion. But just, they pretty much talk to each other, and that's all you pretty much need to know. And so that's pretty much that. And then they have this other one, it's kind of, I say beige and white. It's not blue and white, and it's a publication. It kind of looks like that. And you can go online and check that out. You can pull that out. And the first thing I'll talk about is if it's the taxpayer, or even, it doesn't matter, whoever's there, I'll still talk about representation and stuff. That, you can have someone to represent you. It's basically, and I'll just kind of like summarize, it is a summary of your taxpayer rights. And so my main things that I'll key in will be that. I will talk about, and then I'll go into on here, I'll talk about the appeals process. And, and I basically will state, if we get to a point in the examination where we can't come to an agreement on this, or you just don't agree with me, well, you know what? You can take your case to appeals. It'll be another person that'll listen to it. And they also have a fast track appeals option. And then if that doesn't go well, you can always go to tax court. And so I think that's for today. That's pretty much all I'm going to discuss. I think anything longer than 10 minutes on a video, pretty much people just lose your interest. And I wouldn't want to wait. I wouldn't want to listen to anybody for more than 10 minutes at a time on any given subject. So I would just basically lose my train of thought. So on that, thank you. I hope it helps.